So by way of review, last week we were just looking at astrology. It was all we looked at. And now we all know our horoscopes. How about that? So we looked at, the long and short of it was that we looked at astrology. It's warned against by God. It can be dangerous. It really depends. We looked at that last week, though. And it's definitely unprovable, so it's just kind of nonsensical. And that takes us into this week. We're going to be looking at occultic practices, kind of reoccurring tools. So if you remember, the occult isn't like a religion, it's more of a conglomeration of things that people do. So, there's some people who call themselves Christians and will do occultic things, or some people who call themselves, Wiccans and will do different. It's not really necessarily a box that you fit in, it's just something that you dip into whatever box you're in. And so that takes us to the discussion for today. We haven't leaned a whole lot heavy on the Bible as we've been going through the cults and the occult. That was very intentional. Can anybody guess as to why we didn't do that? Why have we not leaned into the Bible too much for this discussion? Yes, exactly. I want you in a place where you can talk and lead people into a discussion of the faith or into a discussion of the Bible without using the Bible as a starting point, because they just don't care. They do not care. So if you come in straight out of the gate with, well, the Bible says, they're going to say, that's fine for you, or they'll say, I don't care, or they'll say, well, the Bible is just full of contradictions. And you see what I mean? They're going to say something like that, and they're just going to discredit whatever you say. But if you can engage them and lead them towards it, you might have an easier way having a conversation. Was that about what you were going to say, Spencer? Okay. So you start a conversation elsewhere and lead to the Bible. The question is, how can you lead an occultist into that conversation? Any ideas you guys have about how to lead the occultist into that conversation? That's excellent. That is excellent. I second that. Hey, what animals have you sacrificed today, Gee whiz. What do you guys think? I'm an occultist, and Wicca, whatever. So, what are you going to do? What do you say? How does it work for you? Okay. Can you kind of clarify, what do you mean by that? Okay. Sure. Just start asking them questions about it. Okay. All right. Anybody else? Anything else? This isn't about having the right answer, guys. This is more of a thing of, hey, you're talking to occultists, here they are. Any ideas? What are you going to do? Right now I'm getting that you're staring at me. I'm weirded out by the Christians. I'm walking away now. Just talk normal? Like, what do you mean by talk normal? When you say normal conversations, what do you mean by that? Well, I guess that depends, doesn't it? Nice. We're all good going, Grace. Okay, I gotcha. Some of the things that people think are normal conversation. Anyways, moving on. Anybody else? No ideas? Okay, well, if you think of something, wave me down. Let's move on forward from there. One thing I've noticed when you're talking to occultists is just wait, because eventually they're going to say something. You know what I mean? Occultists are very preachy about their stuff. Like, they'll be like, I was reading my horoscope today. Or they'll say, oh, what's your sign? And all this different stuff. And I'm just like, what's my sign for what? Like, what do you mean? I mean, I like Nintendo over PlayStation. Is that what you're asking? Like, what's my sign? Like, it's a Nintendo logo? Or what are you saying? Like, what do you want from me? And, but they'll just have a way of bringing it up in the conversation themselves usually. And then one thing you can really do once they've brought it up organically is simply ask them pointed questions. I think this is kind of what Ken was talking about there. But you don't have to start out of the gate by either condoning or condemning. If you simply ask them questions, sometimes they'll either talk themselves into a hole or they'll give you an opportunity to kind of point things towards the gospel. And then once you get things towards the gospel, you have an easier time from there. Especially because we are getting into a very weird place right now where people are, again, becoming open to the gospel after they were previously hardened to the gospel, back and forth. And a lot of that is because they don't really know a whole lot about it. So it's like we're starting out from square one again, which is a good thing and a bad thing. Blessing and curse, take it however you want it. But and then as you get to these pointed questions and they start talking to you, you can start pointing to how the Bible actually applies to what they're talking about instead of just saying, well, the Bible says this. Show them how it applies to what they're going through. Like maybe they're having a hard time with this or that, and it says, well, one thing that's really helped me is how the Bible says this, or it says, oh, well, the Bible actually says this about that. So I mean, you can go on talking like a friend instead of talking like a school teacher or a judge or something, and their defenses are down because you're just having a conversation, which is just super helpful. But obviously, with all that being said, remember to rely on the Holy Spirit more than anything else. Rely on the Holy Spirit for not just what you say. Not just that, but also rely on the Holy Spirit to do the work in them. Okay, your argument is not going to save somebody. It's not. We have this idea, especially in the modern church, where if you just have the perfect argument memorized, you can get them. But no, it really doesn't work like that. If somebody's not in a place where they're going to receive it, they won't. You know what I mean? So that's a huge, great thing for you. That's a huge burden that's not on your shoulders. The only thing that is on your shoulders is to seize the opportunity when it presents itself. And sometimes that's going to look like, maybe weeks of praying for a person for God to bring by an opposition. What I've found is that the most common reason that Christians do not share their faith is because they don't really have an interest to. They don't really desire to do it. You know what I mean? If there's something you want to talk about, you're going to find a way to bring it up in the conversation. You know what I mean? A great example of that would be politics. How many times I talk to people and they just find a way to bring Trump or Biden into the conversation? I'm like, we weren't even talking about that, though. Well, whatever. Just think about the way that coming to Roswell is a monster truck rally. Monster truck. I've been telling everybody about it, guys. I already bought my tickets. I'm ready to go. Join me, guys. Let's go watch some monster trucks. See, it's going to come up within conversation naturally all by itself. But something that is common, and this isn't common in the church, it's common with people in general. And that's that most people like to sit by themselves and think whatever they want to think. You know what I mean? I've already got my mind made up, basically. Then they never really challenge their own thinking. They never ask the question, am I wrong? Most people do this. This isn't like a religious thing or a non-religious thing. People just do this. We like to separate ourselves from people, come to our own conclusions, and then, don't ever challenge my thinking. So that takes us to the New Age borrowing. So the cult has a lot of different practices. We're going to try to look at the grand majority of them. I'm just going to very briefly explain what it is. But there are some things that are more heavily borrowed, you could say borrowed, by the New Age. And so we'll just go through them. And if you have any questions about one specifically, just kind of wave me down and let me know. The first thing that they use, astrology, horoscopes, and zodiac. We looked at that last week. The idea that it's giving you somehow giving you guidance for your life, which is a great opportunity for conversation, because basically you can tell the ones that are into this kind of stuff, you know what I mean? They'll have like the necklace on or the dark colors on their nails or their eyes. They'll just kind of look the part, you know what I mean? And so then when they bring up the thing, it's like when you're talking to Wiccans, you just know somehow in the back of your mind, this woman is a Wiccan. There's just something, once you've seen like 20 of them, you kind of get the feeling for them. You guys ever had Wiccan friends like me? No? Okay, well, there's just kind of a personality to them. It just kind of emanates from them, And so it's a very good opportunity because they're going to be very heavily involved with, knowing things about their future and whatnot, and it really is a great way to just segue straight to Christ. I mean, it really doesn't even require that much work. You just start asking them questions about the astrology, about their beliefs, about whether it's, whether they've noticed sometimes that maybe the horoscope didn't really come how they thought it would, that kind of stuff. And you can just kind of lead questions. And if you read in the Gospels, Jesus actually did this a lot of times when he was witnessing to people, just asking questions. Really great. Next thing up is auras. This is basically everybody has like a color to their spirit. And those colors kind of give off either the mood, depending on who's asking, it's either going to give off something about their mood or something about their characteristics in general. Some people talk about their aura as more like an energy source more than a light source. Both of those things happen. And if you notice, a lot of the things with the occult are built on kind of an idea of truth. Like, for instance, some people do have a certain energy to them, you know what I mean? Like, some people, you get by them and they're just kind of downers, like Eeyore. You just walk up and you just know this guy's a bit of a downer. You just have a certain energy to them. So there's an element of the whole aura idea that's true, but the thing is they take that tiny little fragment of like a half-truth and turn it into a whole thing. So another thing is, you could call energy vibes. They're giving off vibes in a sense. But to get a little bit more, I guess you should say less pseudoscientific, there's an idea that's been coming out that auras are actually a thing, and what they are the electrical charge that your body produces, and it's just whether some people can see the electrical signal coming off your body or not. I don't know how much truth there is to that, but there's an idea of it. Another thing is some people seem to think that an aura is an actual thing, but it's an emanation of your spirit. Moving on to the next thing is automatic writing. Obviously, this is not just involved in the New Age. This is something that we see in a lot of the different occultic circles. And it is exactly what you think it is. A spirit takes over and writes. It's that simple. Like, it's exactly what it sounds like. It is automatic writing. Usually done by a medium. Not necessarily, but usually. Although technically, if it was happening to you, that would make you a medium, so whatever. This is a real thing. But, and I want to emphasize this is not how the Bible was written. Some people have this idea that when the Bible says that it is inspired by God, that means that he took over the people's body and had them like write the thing. He didn't possess people, guys. He inspired them what to write. You know what I mean? Have you honestly ever gone through the book of Numbers and thought, that comma was inspired by God? No, that's just how you write it down. You know what I mean? So yes, the whole Bible is inspired by God, but what that actually means is oftentimes twisted way far. But there's a lot of great scholars who have already written about that, so I don't really feel the need to. Next up is clairaudience, which is where you hear voices, which I'm keeping all the jokes to myself here, guys. I really am. I'm working really hard at this. Sometimes clairaudience is made up. They're saying that they're hearing something that they're not really hearing. Sometimes it is a mental illness. You see a lot of times people, maybe schizophrenic or, other things like that, and they're just not on their meds. Not really a great thing, but then they just kind of believe the things. And then sometimes it is genuine. And this isn't obviously just with the occult. I mean, even Christians can hear voices, like when God's talking and stuff. So yeah, that is a thing, but not just for the demonic. And there's clairvoyance, which is where you're seeing things, which once again is not exclusive to the occult. So the things you might see, dreams, visions, precognition, some of it's going to be imagination. This is where you just want there to be something, and so you just kind of, your mind runs wild. Or it's going to be something made up. So you want so badly that you just pretend like it's there. Sometimes it's a mental illness. Sometimes it's genuine, but it's from the demonic. And then sometimes it's genuine, but it's from God. Although it should be said that some people have what appears to be like a sixth sense, okay? So I'm going to give just a brief idea of this. Some people just feel things very intuitively without the aid of demonic or supernatural means, okay? A great example of this would be, I'm in America, and I just know the instant my brother dies around the world in India. You know what I mean? And that has been documented before where that kind of, people have that kind of sixth sense. Some people call it premonitions. I have it written down further on. But that appears to be a real thing, and it appears to not always be demonic or spiritual. Next up is crystals and stones. So the idea of crystals, which is very common even for Christians to use these, the idea is that they have a certain vibration that comes from them, and that can either be used for healing or for meditation or whatever. A variation of this actually came out a couple years ago, and that's that there's a certain audio frequency that if you play it, it will bring you healing in your body. So it's like kind of like a white noise, but it's not quite white noise. It's like a different hertz or whatever. And you play it in the background while you're doing whatever, and it's supposed to just like bring you healing. It's basically the same thing, it's just a variation of it. Next up is divination. This is probably the one that people know the most. Divination is kind of a catch-all phrase. It applies to a lot of different things. And a lot of times people will call it divination when it's technically not. Like it'll be augury, for instance, and they'll call it divination. It's not really that big of a deal. You can just kind of include them all. It's fine. This is where you predict through interpreting. And the thing that you're interpreting is either going to be tarot, runes, crystal gazing, omens, scrying, whatever. Scrying is where you are, it's kind of like a trance with either a mirror or with fire or with a mantra or whatever. And you're, telling the future through it. Next up, another form of divination is palmistry. There's another word for it. I think I have it written somewhere else, but basically, it's exactly what it sounds like. You look at the lines on your hand; it's supposed to be able to tell the future. Next up, besides another form of divination, is dreams, which is used by a lot of people. And nowadays, there's a lot of people who want so badly to have spiritual encounters that sometimes they'll have a crazy dream and they'll just instantly, without any kind of discernment whatsoever, say, it's definitely the Holy Spirit. And it's like, well, it could be, but once again, there should be some kind of, weighing of it. Maybe go to prayer and kind of see what God has to say. Because you can give meanings to anything, right? But if God doesn't give the meaning for the thing, it's not really from God. You know what I mean? Like, I had a dream and there were three water buffaloes in the dream. The 3 must stand for something. Okay, so what do I have 3 of in my life? Okay, I have 3 sons, so my 3 sons will grow to be strong like a water buffalo. And it's like, well, yeah, I guess I could see where you got there, but at the same time, that wasn't from God. You just kind of made it up. So does God speak through dreams? Yes. Does he speak through dreams as much as these people with their Facebook accounts claim? No. Definitely need to be careful with that. I will say that sometimes it seems like God talks to some people in certain ways over other ways with other people. Next up is extrasensory perception, also called ESP, and this is kind of what I was talking about with knowing things, hidden things through precognition. Through premonitions. And that's pretty much exactly how it sounds. You're just getting secret, hidden knowledge. Next up is medium. There was a funny joke that I heard about a small, medium, at large, and I can't remember how it goes. Like there's a short medium who breaks out of jail or something like that. I forget how the joke goes, but it's small, medium, at large. And anyways, I can't remember the joke, guys. Look it up for me. It's super good, Todd. You don't even know. A medium is basically somebody who is a conduit between the spiritual world and our world. So either it's going to be according to them. I'm trying to give definitions that they would agree with, not definitions of, okay, so just kind of bear that in mind. Like I'm going to talk here in a minute about magic. We're not going to talk about magic and spells until we talk about Wicca, but I'm just kind of mentioning the idea of it. So the spirit can be either a ghost or a demon or a divinity of some sort or a demigod or whatever. You are a conduit between the two. There's numerology, which is where numbers will have certain values attached to them, certain meanings to them, and you use that for divination. You kind of add up the numbers and do it that way. The interesting thing about numerology is actually people use the Bible like this, more the Old Testament than the whole Bible, but still. And they'll go and they'll count different words up in the Old Testament, and they'll give it different special hidden meanings, and, this word has the value of this, so it has a secret meaning. So rather than listening to the truth of the Old Testament scriptures, they'll instead try to take the numbers of the Hebrew letters and make their own thing to give a secret hidden knowledge. And it's just, obviously you can see how quickly this goes down the rabbit hole. Next is an out-of-body experience, which is a real thing. So there's two kinds of forms of this. One's astral projection, the other one's astral travel, though not everybody makes the distinction between the two. Astral projection is where your spirit travels somewhere otherly, while your flesh stays where it is. Some people teach that your spirit is tethered to your body. Some people say that it's not. Same concept either way. And then there's astral travel, the second one that I mentioned. That's where your body and your spirit are taken away and moved to a different place. We'll look at that a little bit more in the future, especially since it seems like there's a biblical account of this happening. So keep that in mind. We'll have to come back around to it at another time. Sometimes people think that your spirit is held in by your chakras. Your chakras basically are the energy sources of your body, and so that would be the tethering thing. Some of these out-of-body experiences are said to be intentional, and some of them are said to be unintentional, but that's neither here nor there. There's parapsychology, which is when a person has powers. So think of the professor from X-Men, okay, where he just has those kind of powers. Then there's psychic, which is basically a person who uses these different occultic tools and maybe even telepathy and stuff to give information, through their psychic third eye and stuff. Psychokinesis and telekinesis, basically the same thing. You're moving things with your mind. Pyramidology or pyramid power. This one's kind of weird. So there's power in the pyramid in the New Age thought, and maybe even specifically with the hieroglyphics, depending on who you're talking to. And so the universe has the power. It comes through into the pyramid, and you use the pyramid as kind of like a power source. I guess you could kind of think of it like a plug-in. Then there's a seance, which I'm pretty sure everybody knows what that is. That is where there is a meeting that is presided by a medium, and there'll be a group of people there, and they will be attempting to contact the spiritual world, be that they might define that as the dead, they might define it as angels or spirits or whatever else. There's a spirit guide. You hear a lot of people talking about this. That's my spirit animal, right? A spirit animal is a variation of spirit guide, and the idea here is that there are these spiritual beings which exist somewhere between earth and heaven, somewhere in there. And oh my goodness, did I drop that? Okay, sorry, I thought that my computer just messed up. Ooh, we're good. We're just talking about spirit guides. So they live somewhere between heaven and earth, and they're kind of like multi-dimensional beings. So a lot of people actually take this and try to incorporate science into it and say, okay, there are infinite dimensions, kind of like the multiverse from Marvel. Think of it kind of like that. And so these other beings are having contact with us, and that's where the spirit guides come from. I think it sounds even crazier when they try to include science into it. Just as whatever. Either way, these spirit beings will come with one of two things almost every single time. I want to say every single time, but there may be an exception. Either they will come asking for help, or they will come to you when you are asking for help. That's the thing that always combines these stories together. It's always the same thing there. They will either contact you in some way or directly appear. Then there's telepathy, which is where you're talking with your mind. Think of, once again, like X-Men. Now, those are all the things that are commonly used in the New Age that are occultic things. And just real quick, have you guys ever known any New Agers who used any of those things? Okay. Which one specifically? Anybody else? Were you about to? Sure. Which gets really weird really fast. Okay, all right. Then the next, we're just going to look at a few more things. We already hit most of the things, but there are still a couple things to look at, which are used by the occult more broadly. The first thing is amulets, charms, and fetishes. Now, this is a crazy thing because they're going to say the spiritual world is dangerous. Like Wiccans will say this all the time. The spells are dangerous. You got to be careful. So wear these charms or this fetish or whatever. It's gonna help keep you safe. But then it doesn't actually keep them safe, they'll say, oh, I'm having sleeping problems, I'm having nightmares, and oh, there's these evil spirits, and so I hang a what's it called, dream catcher on my wall, and it's not really helping, so I had to get a different one that is blessed by a sage, and it's just like, eh. So you're doing all these extra added steps to keep yourself safe from the effects of the cult, but you're still practicing the occult. That's like saying I'm going to keep drinking a poison, but it's okay because I'm drinking a antidote, but the antidote is becoming less and less available. And here's the thing. I'm not sure. Some people swear by charms and fetishes. I'm not sure if they ever work or not. I'm not really going to try it either. So I can't have any personal experience to argue with you about it, but it seems to me, why would you want to mess with that when Jesus can take care of all of it? Like, why would you even want to try? You can try this. It only has a success rate of 20%. Yeah, but this has a success rate of 100%. Why wouldn't you just go with that? I don't get some things, but, once again, I guess that's just because I don't see the allure of a lot of this stuff. Some people are really super into the occult, and I've never seen the appeal. I just have never seen it. We'll move on. Maybe that's what it is, which I never needed to feel. I mean, whatever. Kind of like that arrogant haha. Okay. Well, whatever floats your boat, I guess, right? So these things are supposedly imbued with power that protect the owner. So the dangerous spiritual world out there isn't really buying what they're selling there, huh? Next up is chakras and yoga. I'm concluding these together. We've already talked about yoga, so I'm not going to talk about whether yoga is evil or not evil. We're not even going to look at that. I'm just going to talk about this in the sense that it's used by the occult, okay? And once again, I'll say the same thing here that we said before when we were talking about yoga. You really have to come to your own conclusion about yoga. We could keep going back and forth, and I know a lot of times Christians do, but I have better things in my time to do with my time than argue about stuff like that. So, yoga is either used by the occult, to empty yourself to the universe or to empty yourself for a Hindu god. The idea is to kind of create a balance in your spirit through the cleansing of your energy points or chakras. And once again, there is partial truth to this idea that they just run wild with. Is it true that your posture affects your attitude? Yes. There's countless studies that show this. For instance, people who look at their phones a lot are more inclined to depression. There's something about the way that it does your neck right here. I'm not exactly sure what it is. I'm not a doctor, but it causes depression. So if you're having depression, maybe don't look down at your cell phone so much, and it will actually help. Also, the screens themselves, the light that comes off the screen causes a lot of issues too for a lot of people. Maybe not everybody, but causing problems like sleeplessness and whatnot. But so there is partial truth to this. Another partial truth is that your body does affect your spirit. Sometimes you'll have problems like anxiety because of a physical medical condition you have. Or you take a certain medication and it causes you to feel anxiety. And so you can say all these verses and stuff about how, casting out the anxiety and whatnot, but until the medication runs through your system, there's a real good chance that it's still going to be there. You know what I mean? Like, God can deliver you. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying typically when you drink a bunch of alcohol, you're going to get drunk. God's typically not going to save you from being drunk. Can I see where I'm going with this? Okay, all right. So let's not, make a big deal out of that, but hopefully you can see what I'm saying, that there is a point of truth with the whole ideas of chakras that people just kind of go crazy with. Where is the line between the occult and a stretch? I don't really know. That's not a question I can answer for you. Next up is channeling. Channeling is nothing like it sounds like. When I hear channeling, I think of, we're going to go take the boat out on the channel, It's going to be real nice. We're going to have those things tied around our neck. It's fun, Not at all what it has in mind to do with this. Channeling has to do with where you go into meditation, you allow a spirit to communicate with other people through you, which why would you ever want to do that? I don't know. But this is often done for profit. Once again, a lot of it is fake, but that does not mean that all of it is fake. Crystal balls, and the next thing. You get secret knowledge through revelation, and that's pretty much the end of it. The next one is a series of things that are all kind of interconnected. There's dowsing, augury, all these different things, water witching, and so on and so forth. Dowsing is not just water witching. There's more variations than just water witching, okay? Then there's also what's called pendulums. This is where you have a stick with weights on it, and same basic concept though, and diving rods, which are once again same kind of basic concept. These are devices that are used to discover either water or something else, some secret hidden thing, supposedly through vibrations that are coming from either the earth or so on and so forth, and you can use it to contact the spirit world. That's the long and short of it. Next is energy, also called chi, also called prana, depending on which tradition you are looking into. And that's basically a force in us and in the universe. Kind of think of it as the force from Star Wars. Go ahead. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'll do you one better, Ken. There was this one guy that was a huge nerd. I mean, he was a huge nerd. And he was talking about mana, but he wasn't talking about it in the occultic sense. He was talking about like role-playing, but in real life. Like he left his video game at home and came to school. It was in college. But he was pretending like he was... That guy was just off. You know, he was a unique guy there, I guess. It would be the only way I could say that. But he wasn't involved in the occult. He was just a little bit, you know... Well, homeschooled. It was a little bit homeschooled. It's okay, guys. I'm homeschooled. It's okay. And all the people are saying, that explains it, Pastor. Okay, then there's something called an electronic voice phenomena. You'll probably see something along the lines of this when we get into the ghosts and haunting bit in June, I think is when that is. And the basic idea is simple. If you've seen one ghost, you've seen them all. There's a voice, that's picked up on an audio device, and they have these special recorders that they use, and all kinds of different stuff like that. But the thing is, most of the time, and we'll look at this more later, but most of the time, the sound that is supposedly a voice that is picked up could be a whole lot of different things. You know what I mean? It could be. What was that? Radio frequency, you stepped on a stick and it echoed. I mean, just a bunch of different stuff that it could be. And then there's this thing with psychology. It's a very interesting thing. It's where you suggest something and people accept it because you suggested it. Actually, mentalists and psychics do this to try to control the crowd. So basically, you'll say, there'll be just an indiscernible noise, like, and then I'll say, did you hear that? It said, free me. And you're just like, did it though? And then because now you have something in your head, you're just like, oh, I can kind of see that. Like people do this with animal videos, right? Like their cat will make a certain meow or whatever, and they'll be like, it said hi. I heard it. The cat said hi. No, it said meow. It may have said it weird. Your cat is a weird cat, but I mean, it does not mean that it's actually speaking another language. Okay. Let's see what else. Oh, yeah. Next up is Yi Ching, which we're really not going to look at. It's basically a book of divination from China, and we'll just kind of leave it at that. You could go down the rabbit hole with that, but it's kind of a waste of time, in my opinion. Next thing is magic, which we're not going to look at too much, just the basic idea. It's basically a supernatural power controlled through either spells or through the previously mentioned occultic tools that I said. There are major differences here between fantasy and real-world magic and spells. And regardless of whether you think that is evil or not, that's your own thing. But I mean, as we look at Wicca especially, I want you to try your best to just forget about magic as it is in fantasy and do your best to just focus on how the Wiccans believe in it, because there's going to be some big differences there that are very much so worth knowing, especially if you want to actually communicate with Wiccans about the gospel. For instance, did you know that Wiccans have this idea that you can control somebody, not just Wiccans, but you can control somebody by if you can successfully cause somebody to get flustered or lose control of themselves, it's considered part of working a spell over them. You have dominance over them. Which is good to know, because if you're talking to an occultist, they might actually be trying to irritate you. They might actually be trying to get you mad so that they can see if they have power over your God or not. Little things like that are very interesting to know, but we'll come back to that. This power is said to come from the universe. Okay, next up, here it is. Okay, the different names for palmistry. Remember we were talking about that? The different name is chiromancy. But it's very similar to some other things. Tea leaf reading, which is exactly how it sounds. You drink the tea with the leaf still in there, and how they rest on the cup is what you're reading. Bone reading, which was obviously very common in, I want to say, China, and I want to say among the Vikings, if I remember correctly. Then there's liver reading, which was pretty much common everywhere. That's where you look for different irregularities on the liver, or you look for different spots on it or whatnot. Then there's bird watching, which is actually augury. The different birds that are in the sky at different times will give different ideas and different, symbols for the future and all that. So when you're looking to the sky, you're not just looking for stars, you're also looking for birds. A couple of last things, and then we're going to be done with this long list. And I just wanted to go through the list like this just so you can see the different things and to try and, as you're dealing with the cultists, you're going to see some of these things popping out. Next one is psychometry, also called scrying or retrocognition or postcognition. That's where you get visions and knowledge from a person's life after the event, or you do it by either touching something that they had or going to a place that they had been. And in doing that, you get a vision or whatever about this person and have knowledge about them. Next up is Ouija boards. We already kind of talked about that, though. It's a device that's commonly used for having conversations with spirits. We looked at runes. No, we did not look at runes. I don't think I even mentioned them. Runes are exactly what it sounds like. They're writing that you put on an object, and then you cast it, or not, kind of like you would cast lots, kind of the same idea. And you get answers to questions. They're used for communication, for magic spells, and for fortune telling. And the last thing that I want to mention about the occult, the last little tool in their quiver, or arrow in their quiver, I guess would be better, is the tarot, which are cards that are used for telling the future. The basic idea of the tarot, though, is a little bit of... Not that the rest of the occult really makes a lot of sense, but when we're talking about the tarot, this is one that really doesn't make sense. So they're cards with different images on it, but do you know how you tell the reading of the tarot? Whatever you want it to be. It's literally personal to you. So there's no absolute truth with it. It's I'm reading my tarot, and whatever significance I give to it is whatever it has. What a stupid thing. Maybe it's just me. I need something. I'm more of a scientific mind. I need something that's concrete, like, hey, what's happening here? You know what I mean? You can't just go off on this. Anyways, moving on. Anything, though, can be used for the occult. And I want to highlight that point because occultists will even use things like the Bible. They'll use the Bible in a spell or something like that. And so you need to know these things so when you're talking with them, you know exactly what you're getting yourself into. Christians, we have rigid lines, right? We believe in God. We believe in God's word, right? Well, the occultist doesn't really look at it like that. They kind of see okay, well, I'll take a little bit here and a little bit there. They don't have those lines. Everything is gray. And so remember this, because you really can't lean into them. Oh, you're a Wiccan. That means you believe this. Well, not necessarily. I mean, they might, or they might not. There are going to be some common themes, though, that you hit with... there are going to be some common themes, though, that you hit with the occult and different stuff. There's going to be things like demons, possession, worship of spirit or nature, witchcraft, spells, ghosts, channeling, dark themes like maybe just dark lighting or dark colors, just something that's dark, monsters sometimes included, not always, sex or sexuality, especially when you're dealing with Wicca. Wicca is super big into sex. That's one of their biggest things, which remember this when you're reading in the Old Testament, they're talking about the cult prostitutes and the Shirapoles. It's basically another variation of Wicca. I mean, let's just be real here. We'll move on from there, but just remember that. Glorifying evil, it's not like in Lord of the Rings or something, where there'll be good versus bad or whatever, or, grim, dark fantasy or something like that. It's where you're actually glorifying evil, where you're making it like it's not a big deal, I kill babies, I work at an abortion clinic, and I'm proud of it. I've had 20, they had this thing a couple years ago where women were shouting their abortion or whatever, and so they were posting on social media, I had an abortion, and they were all bragging and stuff. It's kind of like that, but in more story form. When you're dealing with different things, they're going to do stuff like that glorifies evil, not just that has evil elements like the Bible does, but glorifies it, which the Bible does not do. We already looked at pentagrams, but that's a very common imagery that they used. Inverted crosses, we already looked at that. Psychic powers, we talked about that already tonight, and the occult, generally speaking. So there's a lot of different themes you're going to find in these kinds of things, and so you just be aware of them. A question you have to ask yourself is, where is your line? There's some things that you really cannot allow this kind of stuff in your house, right? But then there's other things that you really have to just be wise, pray and fast, really be careful, just kind of know what you're doing and what you believe and whatnot. Can occultic things or themes be in a book that you're reading, a video game that you're playing, a game that you're playing, or a movie that you're watching, or a show that you're watching? Do they have to be correctly portrayed in that thing, or can you not have any of it? Know where you stand on these things. Is there a difference between fiction and nonfiction? For some people there is, for some people there's not. Be sure you have thought this out and have a reason for whatever you're going to do. I know some people who say, no, I watch whatever, I do whatever, and I say, okay, so why do you believe that's okay for you? And they won't know. Then other people on the other extreme will say, well, I don't do this and this and this and this and this. It's like, okay, that's good. So why do you do that? Like, why? Oh, I don't know, or my pastor growing up told me that. And it's like, well, not that it's not great to have a discipleable spirit, teachable spirit, but there should still be a reason for why you do the things you do. You know what I mean? You don't just go along with it because other people are doing it. Have an idea of why. Have scripture. Have some kind of an encounter with God where God tells you, I'm not really uncomfortable with you doing that. And then you say, okay. Or where God says, you're all good. And then you say, okay. You know what I mean? That's what I'm talking about, personal growth. Does it matter if the author is Christian or not? For some people it doesn't. For some people it does. So I'm not telling you don't think. I'm telling you, think more. Think more about whatever you are or are not consuming. Because if you track these things to its logical conclusion, you have some things that I know we were joking about last week, but still need to be kind of addressed. Is X-Men okay? Some people have a genuine problem with it. What about fortune cookies? I know we were joking about that, but seriously though, is it okay to read a fortune cookie or is it not okay to read a fortune cookie? I know some Christians who are like, no, you can't even eat the cookie. You have just, and then other people are like, I can read whatever I want. It just doesn't really matter. And I think that this is really what Paul was talking about, with different things with the conscience. So it just has to be a line that you figure out where your line is. And, then don't cross it. If you're doing something and you think, this is the line, then live by that line that you feel convicted by. You know what I mean? You don't have to convict other people, but at the same time, you don't have to shift it to please other people. You know what I mean? If God's given you your convictions, you live by your convictions. If he has not, you live by that. That's what you do, all right? So, and the last thing to say about this before we close out, a lot of times when you're talking to occultists, and keep this in mind, they don't care. They simply don't care. They don't care about the validity. So if you say, here's astrology, here's all the problems with astrology and how it's just unscientific nonsense, they don't care. They simply don't care. It's not like a rational conversation. You need to be aware of this before you go into conversation, because sometimes we go into the conversation and we say, haha, I have scientific proof for why you're wrong, and they just don't care, and you're just like, oh, I was standing on that, though. I thought that was really going to win you over, and it didn't. A lot of times you just don't care, and they don't really care about the problems with their belief a lot of times. That doesn't mean that you can't have the conversation. It just means that when you're having the conversation, you need to kind of be listening to see what kind of a mind do they have. Some people have more emotional minds, and some people have more logical minds. Some people have more contradictory minds where they just kind of shift their view for whatever they want to believe at the time. You know what I mean? They're not real firm on anything. So just be aware of that. Kind of read them while you're talking to them. And what they really care about is a personal experience to them, which is a double-edged sword, because with Christianity you can experience something, right? But then also they can say, hey, I can experience Christ and this other thing. So it's a little bit of a thing that you need to watch out for, but we'll close it off there. Basically, the summary of everything we looked at, occultists mix and match different practices to their own preferences. They don't really have a set rule of beliefs. Like we have in the AG, we have the 16 fundamental truths. Occultists don't have their own 16 fundamental truths. It's just whatever, just follow your heart or whatever. So next week, we're going to look at the question and answers in the box. I know there are some pretty good ones in there. Are there any questions before we close this off for the night? Or comments? Questions or comments? Spencer, go ahead.
So, we're reading in the book of Samuel, and there's a part where Saul said no mediums and no mediums at all, but he went in disguise and asked the medium, can you see what Samuel for him? And Samuel's like, why are you bothering me? Like, you use this.
That's me every Saturday.
This medium is, you're using this medium to talk to me, but why are you bothering me? But my part, talking about mediums, I was like, it's in the Bible. I'm just confused with that. We're so against those, we're against those people. Why does it happen in the Bible? Why?
Okay, so if I understand your question correctly, you're asking, why is it wrong? Why are mediums wrong if the Bible records? Okay, all right. So there's different parts of the Bible that are teaches in different ways. Okay, so if you turn back to the law, it'll say, okay, don't have mediums, don't have this kind of stuff, don't have diviners. Actually says, kill them, basically. You don't let a witch live. These kinds of stuff. So there's a lot of stuff that in the law, when God first made his covenant, his blood covenant with Israel, that he lined these things out. Don't do this. Okay. Well, as time went on, Israel wasn't real big on listening. They were kind of like a perpetual 3-year-old, and so they were constantly, just doing whatever they felt like doing. And so we go through the time of the judges. Had that kind of stuff going on, and then they'd have somebody who came and kind of tried to a revival of sorts for the people, and then go back and forth and back and forth. Well, by the time you get into 1 Samuel, you have the nation of Israel. It wasn't really a nation so much as sometimes connected tribes. Even King Saul never really ruled over all the tribes of Israel. He more ruled over the heartland, which included a couple different tribes, yes, absolutely, but he never had complete control over all the tribes. David was the first one to actually make it into a nation and have complete control over all the tribes. So I say that to say this, that there was a lot of occult things happening throughout the land of Israel in different ways, to different extremes. And the Bible records those things, and it does a very good job listing them. But it doesn't condone them, it just says that happened, right? So like a good example of this would be when Jacob marries who he thinks is Rachel. It's actually Leah. And then he gets up in the morning, he's like, whoa, you looked a lot better with alcohol in me, and so then they go on to round 2, and he marries the sister. So it never says in there that it was bad to have more than one wife. It also never says in that part not to marry a woman and her sister. It never says there. It just mentions the habit and moves on. Well, then you get later when the law was given, and God specifically says in the book of Leviticus, do not marry a girl and her sister. So what Jacob should have done is he should have stayed with Leah and let Rachel go. That would be the lawful thing to do. He didn't do that. He didn't even divorce her. He tried to do 2, which I think is probably worse than divorce. I don't know if God has like a tally board, but I think that would be worse. Anyways, and so once again, it never said about thou shalt not have more than one wife. That wasn't in the commands, And obviously the law wasn't given as a perfect utopian guide. I understand that. But there's a lot of times when the Bible will say things without outlining whether it's right or wrong. It'll just record that it happened, right? So this is what holds people up with the whole fleece thing with Gideon. Oh, well, Gideon tested the Lord, therefore I can too. Even though the law says, do not put the Lord your God to the test. Well, it's different because Gideon did it. Oh, okay, well, why didn't you say so? Or Samson. I mean, you go down the list. The Bible has a lot of different examples of people not doing the right thing. Or David, a man after God's own heart, who murdered one of his really good soldiers and slept with that guy's wife. Bad things, but yet this is a man with the heart after God. So it's like, there's a lot of things here that the Bible will record it happening without saying it's okay for that happened. So the reason why we don't believe that mediums are a good thing is because, first off, the law said not to, and even though we're not held to the law does still show morality, and so that's something that the New Testament verified that, yes, you don't do these kinds of things. You know what I mean? And so even though the Bible tells stories of that happening, it's not condoning it happening. It's just saying that it did happen. Does it kind of make sense? Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments about tonight? Teresa, go ahead. I think I heard you, but just tell me if this is what you said. Did you say, why did Satan go against God and try to take over heaven? Is that what you said? That's a really good question. Why don't you have Mommy write it down? We'll look at it next week for the question ad, okay? I was really wanting to focus on specifically the occult tonight. All right. So, good question, though. We can answer it next week. Any other questions or comments?